Hello, everyone. This is the Modern Merlin with Pagan Pages, and I am so excited to be interviewing the wonderful Rachel Roberts. She is the author of Lupa, the Pagan Portals book about the she-wolf of Rome, and she is also the author of Wolf, which is an amazing book. If you're into wolves, especially in their spiritual capacity, I would definitely recommend checking out both of her books. So, without further ado, welcome, Rachel. How are you doing today?
Mm. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. Thank
Excited.
you for meeting with me. It's been a long time coming when we both had illness and it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back, but here we are finally. Um, so if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, just kind of
Mm,
how you got into wolves and the spiritual practices associated with them.
okay. So I'm from North Wales, for anyone that doesn't know me, the United Kingdom. So I'm from Wales, like since the beginning of time. That's where my family's from. There's Druids in my family. Going back even to the Welsh princes, that's not really important, but you know, for me, I'm very Welsh. That's my identity. It's very important to me. So that's kind of, I think, in the Celtic nations, we have a very ingrained kind of like within us, we have that kind of spirituality within us that comes from our ancient past, from the Druids and the ancient people, the Celtic people. So I feel that within me. I've always felt that within me, this connection to the mountains and the sea and the ancient gods and goddesses. And the Welsh gods and goddesses have kind of always been with me. However, my path has taken me towards the Roman pantheon. So they're the ones I particularly connect to, which led me to Lupa. My practice has always been just connecting to nature primarily, but also movement. So dance. I'm also a dance teacher, a sacred dance facilitator, um, and dance has been my way of kind of connecting, of meditating, of opening up. So I facilitate kind of in two ways: history and kind of dance and dance with nature and connection to nature. Um, the walls, the way I came to them, I can't even quite remember. Like Wolf was always kind of there in the background. It always just intrigued me. Just wars in general. I think because I've always had this sympathy for kind of like what has been termed the bad guy, in folklore, but also in this kind of societal expectations, etc. So, even like in like Marvel, I'm always like, oh, I prefer the bad guy.
Sometimes
Just
they
like
make more sense.
I'm always curious as to why they're kind of labeled bad, that nothing's ever completely black and white, everything's always like, it's never that simple. And it always just intrigues me that when people label something as wrong or bad or evil, I think, is it really? Or is that you just don't like it or it triggers you or you just don't want it? So wolves have always intrigued me, I think, because of that, because they always end up being the bad guy in the stories and the tales, don't they? Really, in moral stories, anyway. Um, so that kind of like I was always intrigued by these two golden eyes that were in the dark of the forest that just called me in. I really wanted to kind of go in with them into the forest and run away and escape. So wolves have always been in my kind of like peripheral vision, I suppose. Um, for me, I've always originally I felt I connected to them in a feminine way, but now I kind of have that balance with the masculine as well as I've connected deeper and deeper to Mars, who's one of my primary guides. Um, but really, the moment where I started actively working with them and really choosing to use them and connect them and commune with them as spirit guides was all because of Lupa, who I wrote my first book about. And it was because I was going through a dark night of the soul, where I lost my job and I didn't know what I was doing, who I was, where I was going. And I was just reading an ancient Roman text. um, and her story just came up and I just connected to it so deeply. It was really the story of Romulus and Remus, of course, as all the men that have written about it have wrote about, the two male heroes. But for me, she was the hero. I saw her, felt her, heard her, and she came forward and was like, please write the story from my perspective and tell my side of things. So I know that's a very long answer to it, but that's how it all started and how it's all weaving together.
No, that's an excellent answer. My in with wolves, kind of like you, they've always been in my peripheral.
Mm,
But my in is actually through the crow raven uh,
mm,
symbiotic relationship. So crows have always been around me since I was a kid. I've always loved them. People,
mm,
again, they're always the bad guys. They bring bad stuff. Well, actually, no, they're
mm,
just misunderstood, just like wolf. Um,
mhm,
and so through that connection, I started to kind of see wolves more positively. The term lone wolf kept striking out to me. And then when I read Lupa, it just all clicked. I mean, to the point where I wear my wolf pendant almost every day. This is an altar piece, it's Labradorite wolf. You know, it's so much ingrained into who I am because, in a way, I am that lone wolf. I've studied so many different things and I have different ways of thinking about it than what you would consider the mainstream thought. Um, so when people say, "Oh, hey, Merlin's using poisons to induce visionary states," he's crazy. Like, no, the ancients did that too. I have ancestry going back to the UK as well. I mean, from Wales to Scotland and Ireland, even. There's certain clans that are still out there in Scotland and Ireland that if I were to drop the names, they'd be like, oh, hey. Um, Regardless of that, though, I've always had that calling to the Celtics as well, to the Celtic peoples and their culture. I think the land out there is just stunningly beautiful too. But being in the States, I've had to find a way to cope with it's almost like a removal from home in a way. I almost feel like I was born on the wrong continent, if that makes sense. Um, and Wolf kind of helped me embody who I am and what I am, despite what perhaps the society around me thinks about it. I also found my voice too. I'm less afraid to speak my truth. And I don't care if it pisses people off. I don't care if it, ruffles feathers. It just is what it is. I wouldn't say it out of hate or malice, just out of, hey, this isn't right. Or have you thought about this? Um, what you said about the sacred dance is interesting to me because that awakens a lot of kundalini energy too.
mhm.
And something that I have been working with a lot lately is the kundalini energy, especially as we're in the year of the wood snake now. And I've actually been trying some sacred dance ideas myself. That aside, have you worked with lycanthropic magic, like shape shifting, werewolf type stuff, or is that something you've ever looked into?
So I personally haven't. I know that some people that work with wolf energy also work with werewolves. I see them as very different things. The reason I say that is werewolf is the shifting between human and then going into another creature, isn't it? It's that shift. Whereas wolf energy is kind of has that purity of it's just wolf, so it's not contaminated by human energy.
Mhm.
So there's neither's wrong, and they're both valuable. But I haven't. I've chosen to work with just wolves. Obviously the deities have that ability to shift, don't they, into animals? But again, that's different. That's deity into animal, whereas werewolf would be human into animal. So you're still taking with you kind of your human characteristics, aren't you? You're taking your aspects of your personality. Like often when we shape shift, I mean, we can do that, not physically, obviously, we can't do that, but we can do that on journeys or we can do that metaphorically. We're taking and accessing aspects of ourselves, aren't we? Either amplifying them, opening them up, or addressing them. That's what that enables us to do, doesn't it? So that shift is kind of shifting into, I would view it as something deeper than ourselves. So that werewolf potentiality is actually within us. Or, that we can shift into that. We could shift into anything, I suppose. It's like embodying an archetype, perhaps. I don't
Mhm.
know. How does it feel for you? How do you work?
So
because it's not a thing for me.
so I work with pure wolf energy through deity or just through the wolf itself as a spiritual concept.
Mm,
But Lupa and werewolf magic kind of came at a meeting point in my life. I was also at the end of a dark night of the soul. I was um, really heavily involved with certain people in the metaphysical community, and they, for whatever reason, just kind of ousted me. So I felt incredibly alone, betrayed. I mean, like et tu Brute type feeling.
mm,
And Lupa said, "Okay, that's fine. It was actually supposed to happen. That's better for you this way."
mm,
But also, they were kind of throwing some magical shade my way too, right?
mm,
So the werewolf part kind of comes into the protection and the standing your ground for me. It's not that I'm going out there and trying to literally turn into a wolf or
mm,
what have you. I am trying spiritually to embody that more harsh side of my personality, the side of myself that puts my feet down and says, enough is enough. It's done. I'm not going to accept this any longer. And if that means I have to counterattack, then so be it, right? I mean, I'm a sorcerer, a witch, and I'm hex positive. Sometimes you got to mess people up. It just
mhm,
is what it is. But that doesn't mean that I can't recognize, is this my shadow, or is this, me and rightfully saying, okay, time to put the foot down, time to not play nice. And I think that's where the lycanthropic magic
mhm,
is tricky. I think some people can get really
mhm,
lost in the power they feel with it, and then there's
mhm.
people that recognize it's a balance.
Yeah.
So I like to say that I have three wolves inside of me. I have my werewolf. I have me, which is just this earthly body trying to embody so much of that wolf energy in their life. But then my higher self or my like
Mhm,
spiritual wolf too. That's kind of how I've always viewed
mhm.
it.
Yeah, I mean, they're all potential parts of ourselves, aren't they? So, with any of the archetypes, any archetype at all, we can embody all and any of them. And, as far as we take that is as far as our potential goes, I suppose. I mean, if we were feeling fear about embodying any of those, then I think it's fear of our own potentiality, and what we can actually be because we are powerful beings. Anything is possible. And it can be quite scary when you're touching that, and you're finding that and you're, oh, where's my edge? Like, where's my point of the tip of the iceberg? Sometimes that can be quite intimidating, can't it? And wolf is a really powerful energy. Like I say to a lot of people, if they're not ready to work with wolf, is to work with dog energy first, the descendant of the wolf. It is a branch of wolf energy, and it is gentler. It's kind of some of the same themes are there, but yeah, it is a gentler way to kind of, yeah, to start out, if people aren't feeling ready for wolf, because wolf will take you to the wildest places, to your strongest places. They will take you to the dark of the cave and the dark of the forest, so I think we're ready though. If you do get called that, you are ready. But just be aware, if you're haven't been called but you're wanting to go there, I would start with dog energy first. Mm.
And there's even other canid species too. There's fox. Fox is a little more chaotic at times as far as its energy
Cheeky.
goes. Yeah, it can be a little cheeky, a little tricky, just kind of okay. Um, Loki comes to mind, obviously, with Fox energy. But there's also like jackals for ancient
Mm.
Egypt. You look at Anubis or Wepwawet. I can never pronounce that name right, but
Yeah, I know you
they're
mean.
the divine twin deities, the dark and the light, and
Yeah.
it that energy kind of surrounds every culture that you look at.
Mhm.
And I think that's partially why people have such a connection with it. I also think that the state that our world is in is
Yeah.
making people kind of realize that wolf is needed. And you were talking about wolf being the bad guy in a lot of moral stories.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've been reading a lot of my stuff about uh, I've been exploring the whole devil and witchcraft idea. um,
Mhm.
but embodying that bad guy, that inner bad guy within you is really empowering too. Because sometimes it is nice to say, I'm fine being the bad guy because I know what I did was right. You just don't like it.
Mm,
Um, and again, that kind of is, it speaks to the lesson of Wolf. Um, One lesson that I've particularly learned from Scotty is it's okay to tread your own path. Sometimes you have to.
mhm,
Um, One deity, wolf deity that has specifically scared me, not in a bad way, but more just
mm,
brought to surface things about myself that I didn't like thinking about was Lupercus. He just he's much darker than Lupa. Lupa
mhm,
is kind of like you've described her as kind of like the fairy godmother type. He is the
mhm,
embodiment of the underworld energy. Um, you know, the darkness. I just see his eyes. I don't even see his silhouette. He's all black,
mhm.
and I just see glowing eyes, and
Yeah.
it's frightening. And that
Mm,
is what Wolf will make you face. I've
mhm,
since faced it and dealt with it and done what I needed to do, but the hesitation is definitely there for a lot of people. Even people that I know that think wolves are beautiful, there's certain things that I've hinted at practicing this or doing that or referred them to your books, and they're like, I just don't know if I can do that. I'm like, well, maybe you're not
mm,
ready. Maybe it's not time to jump in. If you have a dog,
mhm.
pet your dog, play with your dog.
Yeah.
Um,
I think because walls are mirrors, like this is the thing I've always found is that when you're looking into the eyes of a wolf, you are looking into a mirror, so if there's any part of yourself that you haven't accessed yet or that you fear, that is what actually that you are fearing. So, you're kind of, is it the untamedness of the wolf that fears you because you don't want to be untamed yourself, as in you don't want to let go of control? Or is it that, fierce protection, perhaps, you've had leaders or the masculine in your life that has, as you have now in some places, some messed up leadership, and therefore you feel kind of betrayed by the masculine, and therefore, you're scared of that power that they represent because you've seen it messed up in other places. So I think they offer that, like I said, that mirror where you're looking into your own eyes, and they will bring up the fears that you have within you for sure.
mhm. One thing I've noticed is Lupercus seems to kind of appear when power is misused.
Mm,
Um, Not to get too political, but with certain things going on in the States right now, I definitely feel that presence of him, just kind of
yeah.
lurking in the shadows.
Mhm,
Um, and again, we live in scary times as a planet. We live in scary times, and um, I think a lot of it is people are searching for stability, not
mhm,
to face what they don't like. They're looking for stability, not to uproot everything and go through it
yeah.
all. But at the same time, I think that's the only way we can find stability now is to embrace wolf, to embrace our inner wilderness, to embrace our inner part of ourselves that can't be tamed.
Mm,
Um, and I think especially for people that are magically inclined, especially like witches, or conjure people, um, that untamed part of you has to be accessed through ritual,
mm,
or at least to conduct a good ritual. I know I've incorporated a lot of like howling into my wolf
mhm,
magics that I do,
yeah.
kind of opening that throat chakra. It starts guttural and then it just keeps getting louder and louder
Mhm,
and louder. And it's a beautiful thing to just kind of feel free to be yourself. That's what Wolf has allowed me. Not without its fair share of work. Um, but yeah, I find it balanced, like you said. There's a
yeah.
darkness and a light within Wolf, and it's gonna mirror to you whatever you need to see.
Mhm. Yeah, they embody paradox and polarity. So sometimes if you're on one end of the kind of polar side, then they will kind of, get you to work with the opposite side sometimes, perhaps, like I said, for me on my kind of journey, she wolf was easier to access, because I knew myself and I was happy in the feminine, but it was the masculine for me that was really terrifying to work with. So kind of my polarity was working. I've ended up working more with the male wolf, energy. So for example, the second book, Fenrir came forward really, really strong. And like Mars and Apollo, they've become very, very present because that's what I had to work with. And that's what scared me the most. That's the bit that was lost, within me, the bit that wasn't fitting, the bit that, kind of that needed the work doing for sure. Yeah.
And I think as we see the patriarchy start to crumble in this world and we see a more cooperative way forward, I
Hmm.
think that's going to continue. Um, I think there's a lot of wolf and serpent energy going around right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's bringing some massive change, and then change doesn't
Hmm.
come without its pain. Um,
No, I mean it's the chaos, isn't it? Before the end, like with the story of Fenrir, where he is the apocalypse, he is the end, he is destruction, he is the end of the Norse gods, but he's also the beginning. By his presence, he's bringing forth a new world, a new way of being. And you often get this. I mean, this has happened throughout history. I mean, the end of the Roman Empire and all the wars that we've been through, there's been this chaos before there's been a new something coming through, kind of like, Waterloo before, the Industrial Revolution. You've got kind of this icky bit, kind of, I see it as like pregnancy. You've got like this preparing time of building the pregnancy, and then you've got that scary, messy, painful time of the labor before the baby can come out, and you have, this new period. And it just, you can feel that in the world at the moment, that I think we've had all this preparation, this learning that's happened, over the last few thousand years, I think. And we're now in that labor, and the people perhaps that are leading now are midwives of various kinds, some that are going to show you what not to do and some are going to show you what to do, and then this new whatever's going to come out. Hope you're not screaming too much. It's going to be a beautiful new beginning, I think, but that labor has to happen, that chaos
mhm.
has to happen, when sometimes these dark nights of the soul, they can be necessary because I said they clarify things for us. They show us what we don't want, what doesn't work, where we don't want to go. It's almost like they're a pivot point or a shedding point, like this the snake, like you said, taking its skin off, or the wolf kind of going into the cave and then coming back out again. It's that time of like alignment, discerning, what's needed, what's going to be in, what isn't going to be in. I think, and we're all personally having to make that choice now. I think, like in the past, these choices were very much made by the leaders, weren't they? But I think we're more becoming our own leaders. And this is where, again, we're embodying the wolf, is where we're becoming the authority, we're becoming the leader, we're having to step into our alpha. And we're all doing that. We're all kind of, what's my choice? I can't control things around me. I can't control the idiots that are running the country, but I can control how I feel. I can control my self care during the day. I can control who I help. I can control which companies I choose to support. So the power is
Mhm.
coming back to us, and that's very wolf energy, which is why I think wolf is rising now. You know, to show that there isn't just like one alpha of the pack and everybody is subservient. Well, the wolf pack doesn't work like that. Everybody contributes in the wolf pack. They all have their skill that is unique. They all have their knowledge. They all lead at different times. They all offer something different. And that's what, kind of, but, there's even like I talk to people about wolf and they still have this idea of like this alpha. There's like just the alpha and always a man. He's always, big and strong. And there's all these little people that just serve him. It's not how it works at all. It is a community, it's teamwork. And I think that's by us learning more about Wolf going forward, it's teaching us that, it's reminding us that we all contribute, we all matter. Our
Mhm.
differences is what is needed.
I would agree with that entirely. Wolf embodies the freedom to be different, to be you. Um, and that's where we're at, And I think Some people would say, well, that's anarchy, everybody having rule over themselves. Is anarchy really a bad thing, though, if we've all kind of gained that consciousness of maybe I shouldn't do this because it'll affect somebody negatively, but I mean, if it's not bothering anybody, what harm does it do? And that's kind of where we need to think collectively, as a planet, that we are each other's pack,
Yeah.
and not just think of it in social groups and spiritual groups. It's the world is your
Hmm.
pack in a way. Um,
Yeah.
and Wolf can radically change the way that you think too, and the
Hmm.
way that you perceive things. You rely less on what you're told and more on what you're shown.
Hmm.
The gap between actions and words becomes very evident that it is an abyss because many people they'll say they'll do something, but do they actually
Hmm.
follow through? How many times do they actually follow through? Um,
Hmm.
Wolf has made me see things not only from others as a perspective of don't say it, just do it, but also myself. Stop saying it, just do it. Just go do it.
Yeah.
The more you say you're going to do it, the less you're actually going to do it.
Hmm.
It's just all about that personal power within you. And I think that's what enamors me with Wolf so much. I mean, I'm constantly, even when my path veers off into weird places,
Hmm.
Wolf always kind of is there no matter what.
Hmm.
Um, and then, also I've practiced and study certain kinds of shamanism too, and Wolf is a guide. Wolf takes you to the other world. In a lot of these ancient myths, it's always a wolf or a fox or a bear that will take you to the other world. Um, there's just something inherent about them. They just seem to understand the whole picture. We see a lot of romantic artwork of them howling at the moon, at the night sky on the edge of a snowy cliff, and it's like maybe that's a little dramatic, but is it really? I mean, that
Hmm.
kind of sums up who they are. Um,
Yeah.
they're majestic, they're beautiful creatures, they're wise, and I think that we need to listen to nature again. And even if Wolf isn't for you, there are people that Wolf just isn't for them, and that's fine. But
Mm.
find what is for you, and
Yeah.
embody that because again, it is everybody brings something different to the table. That doesn't mean Wolf works for you. Maybe Bear does. Maybe
Yeah.
the squirrel does. Maybe the hawk does, or the eagle, or whatever the case may be. Find what works for you because again, we all bring different things to the table. My approach to my practices is probably different from yours and vice versa. But at the end of the day, if we're all cooperating to do the same thing, we'll get it done.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, oh, what is your favorite wolf deity?
Oh, now I don't know if I could pick
Or like
favorites.
top three?
Oh, top three. Okay. That's probably a little bit easier. Um, so Lupa, of course, because I consider her my mother wolf. And she has been so supportive. She's there all the time, even when I go and meet like other wolf deities or even other deities, like, even just other situations. I'll be going on a flower essence journey with a client and Lupa will just be like, hi. I'm like, okay. That's fine. Um, you know, I think different deities pop up because you need them either, a certain time, a certain place, or they can be with you for life. Some come and go. Uh, like the wolf mother, that mother archetype has always been important for me. And it's been really about mothering myself rather than other people. It's offering myself the tender care, that unconditional love, that we all crave, that we all need, that we all want. And also, she is the mother of destiny. She's really about kind of aligning with our dharma, our destiny, our purpose, the reason we are here. So in her story, with Romulus and Remus, they go to her. They don't go to a rabbit. They don't go to an eagle. They go to her. And the reason being is that she can reveal to them what they are, what they're meant to be. Kind of like, I feel like she's a nursery or a training school for us aligning with our purpose and our destiny, because our destiny, our purpose, I think, Lupa thinks, that that they're revealed in those dark times, in these dark nights of the soul. So when you're thinking, why am I here? I don't want to be here. I just want out. At that point, you will have something, it might not be that extreme, but you will have something revealed to you in those times, like I'm trying to think of an example. So uh kind of for me, like when I went in this dark night of the soul with Lupa, where I was made redundant, it was I had thought I had a dream job. And she was like, no, you can do more. There's more. You're bigger than that. You're keeping yourself small. That's what I had to learn. But I would have kept small if I hadn't been addressed with that redundancy from what I thought was my dream job. So I had to go through that to be pushed into something bigger. So I think she's my most kind of my default, I suppose I would call it, the one that's almost always there. And then the other two are both what we would call masculine deities, I suppose. So Mars is really present for me. He is my father wolf. He embodies the archetype of father. Mars Pater, the father of Rome. I really connect to Mars as I would call his kind of original energy, but then also kind of his later energy as well. So you know, Mars originally was a vegetation god. He is the plants that grow. He is the land. He is the energy of farming. He was the god of the farmers. And then he became, kind of as those boundaries stretched and as, farmers kind of stopped just working on their land, they became soldiers, he kind of began to kind of like, um, protect the borders that got wider and wider of the Roman
Mhm.
Empire, so not just the farm, but then the empire. So he becomes kind of a war god, he's about courage, he's about boundaries, he's about kind of accessing our inner fire and giving it a purpose. So with him, I kind of healed my inner masculine. I had a lot of trauma there, with a father that was difficult and then abuse from men, in my story. So with him, I spent a lot of my life absolutely terrified of all men, of the masculine. I couldn't embody it because I just knew man was hurt, was pain, was shame, all these horrible negative energies that were kind of linked in. And yet he showed me, that Father Wolf, yes, he barks at the boundaries to protect his pack, but he also plays with the pups. He tenderly lifts them with his teeth, those teeth that can kill. He's using to carry his children. So I, kind of had this viewpoint where the masculine was going to hurt me, and he was like, "It's not again, not as simple as that. There's another side. There isn't just the shadow side of the masculine. There's always also the light side." And he showed me how I needed to embody my inner masculine, actually to stand up for myself and to take action. He is, like I said, the fire. So he's that inner flame that, can either burn too much and destroy, or it can be the hearth. It can allow the food to cook, So he very much has taught me that. Um, and has been a very much a healer for the masculine. Like I love the energy of Mars. It's not like Aries. Aries is completely, I mean, it's a different deity anyway. Aries is very much like war,
Right.
war, yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
fight.
Aries is
Whereas,
rage.
yeah, whereas Mars doesn't have that. Mars is like, I'm protecting my children. You do not come into my house.
Mhm.
Whereas Aries would kind of go out down the road and find someone to smack, well, before they've even provoked them. Whereas Mars is like, I'm closing the door now. You are not coming in this house. It's a slightly different energy.
Mhm.
And you can feel that with Mars. He's very protective. Like he's very kind of, I find him a very loving energy. Maybe that's just the way that I relate to him, and maybe that's the way he's presented himself to me. But even like, he has various kind of ways he manifests, even as Mars the Avenger. I find him, it's more like he's showing you where justice needs to happen. Like, where there has been wrong and where you need to direct your fire. Like one of the lessons, like main lessons I had from Mars, was like I remember going to a training and I think my teacher at the time said to me, right, now let out all of your anger. And there was nothing. I had absolutely nothing. Like there was nothing. I was like, I don't have any anger. She was like, oh, you have anger. It's just like it's really deep. Um, and Mars showed me that it was because I was numb. Like I told myself to be a good girl, I needed to be silent. As a woman, I wasn't allowed to speak out. Only the masculine could. And Mars was like, no, because if you don't speak out, if something wrong happens, who is going to speak for like the innocent? Who's going to speak for the people, that don't have a voice? Whereas you do, you can use that fire and direct it so that good is done with it. Fire doesn't always consume, it doesn't always destroy. And Mars taught me that. And then there's one more deity, but tell me if I've spoken too much. You can rein me in
No,
if you
no,
can.
you're
I keep
fine.
going?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say Mars Pater and Jos Pater, which is Jupiter, obviously, they seem
Mhm.
to kind of go hand in hand as those fatherly justice seeking deities, kind of the protector of the innocent. And that alludes to Hecate, then, who is also a
Yeah.
protector of the innocent and the defenseless, and she's a dog
Yes.
deity. So, again, we're
Mhm.
kind of getting into that canine energy of you can love, but you can also mess someone up if you have to. You're allowed to have that polarity.
Yeah.
Go ahead with
And
your.
it's like the potentiality of a dog, like they always say, like, when a dog hurts somebody, I always say that's not the dog, that's the owner
Mhm.
that's hurt that person, because it's the way that
Yeah,
they've treated them. And it's the same the way we treat our inner masculine is the way that it's going to manifest. So if you're kicking that dog, it's going to lash out because it's in pain. It's the same with our inner masculine. And we keep kicking it and abusing it and telling the masculine you're wrong, telling the masculine you're dangerous, you know, that's creating an energy around it that it's almost like you're
you're further
making it
suppress.
there.
Yeah, you're further suppressing it,
Yeah.
which causes outbursts, right?
Yeah.
Um, One thing I'll say is, part of my healing the inner feminine was I had a King Corso pit bull mix, which, in the States, those two dogs are like people have very strong opinions and stigmas. Now, I've had pit bulls before her and they were great. But
Mhm.
King Corsos have been known to be aggressive, right? It reflects the owner, not the dog. And the same goes for a wolf. It it reflects the circumstances that they feel you have put them in, not them themselves. It's the potentiality of, the wolf can protect its pack. Wolves can even interact with humans in very interesting, special, amazing ways. But also,
Mhm.
if they perceive you as a threat, don't be surprised if they come at you. And I just keep getting back to that point of that polarity of potentiality that you keep talking about is something that I think everybody needs to realize. You can tell yourself you're a good person all you want, but you also have to realize you do have a darker side. Everybody has that side to themselves, and we cannot suppress it any longer. That's what's causing a lot of these issues, I think, in the world.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. That part of us is important, because we are a whole being, and that shadow side can often signal to us what matters. So if I get like really, really angry over something, like, I don't know, I don't want to give an example that's too political again, but like say, if somebody says to me, oh, like, abortion's completely wrong, makes me so angry. That's because I value choice. Because there have been times where I haven't had a choice, where choice has been taken away from me. And because I value free will, that's why it gets me angry. So anger could be deemed a shadow, a negative, a bad thing, but it's signaling to me what matters. What is it that I need to stand up for? What do I need to speak for? So if I
right?
just,
Yeah.
I'm not, if said, I'm not even going to go there, I'm not even going to think about anger, what makes me angry. Well, because it's bad, it's negative, you're also not accessing, like, fully what you are, what you can be, and also what you can offer as well, what you can give of service to the world.
hmm I would totally agree that, there's a difference between just anger because, someone cut you off on the highway and anger because there is a serious problem.
Yeah.
If someone wants to take away, and I hate to use political examples, but our world gives them to us all the time, taking away voting, suppressing voter rights, or taking
Yeah.
away, gender identity rights. And, you know, just these things are really infuriating to me. And even though I am
Mhm.
not directly affected by those two specific instances, it's just the simple fact of, like you, I was at a point in life where I didn't always have a choice. Choices were taken away from me. So it angers me that other people are having the freedom taken away from them. Yeah, there's definitely a difference between just anger being anger and righteous anger. Righteous anger is what Mars Pater to me embodies when he stands up for justice, when he kind of takes the sword out of the sheath and says, "Okay, it's time to fight then."
Yeah.
It's he is putting his sword in the ground and saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
Um, and it's scary. I think there's been a lot of whitewashed spirituality too.
Mhm.
And even in the pagan and new age communities, which I would say, unfortunately, a lot of the new age whitewashing has bled over into paganism. And it's only until recently that we're starting to kind of, for lack of a better term, bleed that out,
Yeah.
and say, you cannot deny the shadow any
Mhm.
longer. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an important lesson we're all learning
Mm.
right now.
Yeah. I think we're very good at blaming other, like we can always blame something else, like, oh, say for example, the Crusades, you could blame Christianity. I personally wouldn't blame Christianity. I would blame every single man that made the choice to of his actions, and it's about taking back responsibility, for our actions, for our words, for ourselves. You can keep blaming other people. It's like, say anger, as an example again, somebody angers you, you can go, oh, that person's like really angered me. I hate them. It's their fault. They've done it on purpose. And you could also react by, I don't know, punching them or something.
Hmm.
Well, firstly, you kind of blamed them rather than taking the power back into yourself. And also, you're then blaming them for your action, whereas you're the one that chose to punch them and you didn't have to. You know what I mean? So we have always have a choice. Sometimes it feels like we really, really don't. But even like the way that we receive things, or someone makes me or something makes me feel really, really bad. Okay, I can be that an emotion, but there's a point where I go, okay, I'm choosing to move on from that. This emotion is going to pass. I don't have to um, go and do something really stupid as a reaction to that, So I think we need to take more responsibility for ourselves. This is a big thing that I see. And, you know, more kindness does please more kindness in the world. Kindness does not cost. And I think kindness is the most powerful action we can give. I think, you know, Mars probably his greatest power would be kindness. You
Hmm.
know, if he had a superpower, because that's what heals. And just more kindness. Like you said, we're all different. We're all following a different path, and that's okay. Like I wonder about like the people that even like you see like you'll see an argument, going crazy argument going on social media, and somebody trolling it, and I think, really, that's how you want to spend your energy? That's what really matters to you? Like, and I admire them because they're so full of fire, and I think, gosh, what if they did something that supported and helped with that fire?
Hmm.
Like another example is like people laugh at me because I get really annoyed at football because I see a whole stadium full of men getting so wound up, and they're screaming, they're shouting, they're all the energy for like some blokes kicking a ball around. I mean, that's great if you love football. I'm not dissing it completely because it's good for teamwork and community. However, if all that energy that those men were building and bringing forth was used for something really good, and like all that money, there's still children starving, and all that money goes into lads kicking a ball around a field, and you think, gosh, it's the direction that things are going sometimes that gets frustrating, and you think it's not. And it's not it's not the money itself, it's not the anger itself, it's not the frustration itself, it's not all the noise, it's where it's going, it's the intention, what's being
Hmm.
done with it, where we're choosing to put it, how we're choosing to use it, how we're choosing to put it across. So it's not about the thing itself, it's what we do with it.
I would agree with you. So many people complain that they are drained and tired. Well, where are you putting your energy? Here in the States, American football is crazy. And I'm sure, you've seen on my personal Facebook that I'm an American football fan too. I love it. It's one of my favorite sports, but I will say societally in the States here, it's kind of a problem. It's gotten to the point now where if you turn on, ESPN, you can't go an hour without seeing, ESPN Bet or FanDuel or DraftKings, pouring all this money into betting on it or putting all this money into merch or the tickets or just, watching programming about it, which, okay, fine. I'll self admit I wake up watching sports programming, but there's a point in the day where I turn it off. How much of that energy do I really want to commit to that? Because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of guys, like you said, running around with a ball.
It's bizarre when you think about it, isn't it?
Uh,
You just think,
yeah, I mean,
oh, it's just people just watching them just running around kicking a ball. Like,
and and
when did
and
that
it's
happen?
it's fine if it's entertaining for you. I mean, I would say entertainment and sport for entertainment is something that humanity's always kind of looked to. But
Well, yeah, we're
again,
entitled to pleasure, we're entitled to joy, but
yes,
yeah.
but how much time and energy do you want to keep putting into it? It's one
Mm.
thing if it's your job to report on it. It's another if it's just a hobby for you. There's a point where you almost kind of have to cut yourself off, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I'm totally with you in, choosing where we put our energy and also holding ourselves accountable.
yeah.
Um, there's a lot of people that in the States here, they're trolling on political posts. And it's like, well, if you have such an issue, go do something about it. And that was kind of what
Mm-hmm.
Scotty had a message for me recently where she said, if you're so damn upset about it, then just do something about it.
Hmm.
These organizations that are, the ACLU and DSCC and all this, then you need to do something about it instead of just
Yeah.
blasting it on social media, trying to start a fight. That doesn't do anything except get you
Hmm.
stressed out, get you frustrated. Well, how about you just call your representative and do something? Sign a
Yeah.
petition, do this. Again, it's wolf energy is so versatile in so many ways. Um, I just
Yeah.
truly love the journey that I've been on with Wolf.
Mhm.
Um, what was your third favorite Wolf deity before we?
Oh. Yeah, so can I just say something briefly about Skadi? Because I love the fact that you keep bringing her up, and I love her as well. She's not in my top three. I'm sorry. She's in my top 10. But, but I just, you know, she's so much about taking action. Like, what I loved most about her story is that she's like, you know, my father's been harmed, been killed. I'm gonna go and get revenge. But she kind of she takes action, for that thing. She decides, I'm going to have a husband. She wants to get a husband. It's not quite the right husband she wants. And she's like, well, I tried. I tried. She actually did something. She took action, but then she decides, that's okay. I did it. It didn't work out. I'm going to now choose what is right for me because, again, it's clarified what works and what doesn't work. And I love that about her that she's like, she doesn't tell her husband, you're wrong for preferring the sea, when I think the mountains are better. She's like, no, that's fine. It's your choice. You continue living in the sea. I'm just going to go to my mountains. We might meet once a year. That's okay. She kind of, my path, your path is your path, and I love that about her. Um, so yeah, so my third deity is Apollo. Um, and I I work with him a lot. In a different way to the other two. So I think that Lupa and Mars kind of, for me, come very powerfully through. They're very like big energy about courage and like the big themes. Um, Apollo is kind of my joy and my pleasure. Um, so he's the one I dance with, he's the one I sing with, so if I'm just putting music on, um, kind of like, I mentioned in my book about the different ways that wolves can communicate. They have the howl, they have the growl, they have the whimper. So kind of that, I find that Apollo is very much about kind of my sacral and my throat chakra, and those two kind of working together. He's about kind of sensuality, creation, music, poetry. He's the sometimes I imagine him as kind of like the wolf that is just like basking in the sun and just like lying there going, oh, 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 not caring what he sounds like when he's howling, He's just kind of that's the way I connect to him. And I think that aspect is also important, because we can be really serious. We can be putting things into action. I think you mentioned it before, that pleasure time, that downtime, that joy is just as important as all the serious stuff. And I think sometimes we can get maybe too deep into the serious stuff. We can, everything is serious, everything has to be this way. I'm always working on myself. Sometimes, it's just about like finding the joy, and finding like with Apollo, I feel like he's the sun when the sun gets switched on, and I feel like he's that energy of what turns you on, that energy, like, what turns you on in life, about being turned on for life. So what excites me, what gets my heart rate going, and not just cute men with beards, but like, you know maybe certain flavors, or just the joy for me, the joy of learning, like finding things out. That's a turn on, getting turned on by new facts and knowledge. It's the way you're switching on, like the sun being switched on.
Hmm.
um that's the medicine that he offers me, and I know that other people work with him in different ways. I mean, he's the god of healing and disease and plague, as well as the god of music and dance, but that's the way that he lands with me. So I don't know if that's one that you work with as well or resonate with.
Yeah, I work with Apollo more in the Crow Raven energy, if you will,
Okay,
more in
yeah.
the Oracle sense.
Hmm.
Um, but the joyous aspect of him, I've definitely felt. I just haven't worked on the wolf aspect of him yet. Uh, my top three, obviously Lupa. Lupa's always number one. She is wolf mother. She is home. Um, Whenever I feel lost, I always feel her presence. Um, Second is going to be Diana or Artemis. To me, they're almost
Mm.
interchangeable. Diana takes on more of the witchcraft side of things, and Artemis takes on the more untamed wilderness. But to me, they're kind of one and the same. It's just different names for the same energy expressed differently. Um, so that would be my second, and my third is Scotty. It's all goddesses. I do
Mm.
have wolf gods too. Odin is one. Odin can be a little cantankerous, a little tricky. Um, Got to be watchful with him. I would definitely say Fenrir too. Fenrir is one that, me personally, in my life, I have always felt, misunderstood, kind of
Yeah.
othered, and that's why wolf energy calls out to me. That's why the poisonous plants call out to me, is these things that are othered, that are just kind of not accepted,
Yeah.
mirror how I have felt. I
Yeah.
was raised in a very evangelical household, fire and brimstone, and that is not who I am. I
Mm.
am about living life and enjoying it here versus adhering to some archaic law that I can't even apply to today's world because it was written thousands of years ago when, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have any of this stuff. It just, to me, the refusal to evolve to modern times is what sets back a lot of the Abrahamic religions compared to the pagan religions. Is that paganism has allowed itself to evolve for the modern times, whereas I think a lot of the more conventional religions haven't. They've decided to stay stuck. And I think, again, that gets back at that polarity dynamic of who has been willing to change, who has been willing to adapt, and who hasn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
So those would be kind of my, I guess, top five wolf deities. Now I have a hankering to explore Apollo a little more because
Mhm.
I've worked with Mars Pater a decent amount, I will say. But yeah, I definitely want to get into that. One last thing, I mean, unless do you want to do a
Mm.
part two? Do you have time to do a part two?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because we're on our final
Yeah.
5 minutes for this one, so we I guess we can do
Okay.
a part two. That'd be awesome. Celestial connections to wolf energy. Something that I have found is Sirius, the constellation Sirius, has
Hmm.
a lot of that same energy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you are a believer in like the star seed idea. It's something that I'm kind of getting into myself. Um, but I'm finding that Pleiadian or the Pleiades is obviously heavily associated with Diana
Hmm.
Artemis, and I'm just
Yeah.
kind of finding, if you research that idea, and for
Hmm.
those that are curious, I did write an article yesterday on my new column Stellium about this. Pleiadians are ruled by Artemis or Diana. Well, of course, the wolf connection comes in right there. And if you would think about, the Seven Sisters, that kind of relates again to that fairy godmother type of energy. So in a way, a Lupa connects to that as well.
Yeah.
Um, have you kind of explored any of that stuff, or even like astrological? I know you've explored a little bit of planetary associations, but
Yeah. Um, so not fully and not completely. I mean, a lot of people, have mentioned to me or have been in conversation about, oh yeah, I come from this star, or I'm one of these, I'm a Syrian or whatever they call themselves. That hasn't been present for me. As in, I feel like I don't need to know it in this lifetime, in this experience. When I go out and look at the stars, mm, I just feel a comfort, like a blanket over me, like a big blanket that's keeping me safe and secure. But I feel like very much this lifetime is very much about being here in this body on this earth. And I think some people, they feel they have this longing, don't they, to go back to their star home. I kind of feel like, okay, I've come in this lifetime to like be completely like um
to
incarnated,
yeah, to be embodied here. Yeah.
Yeah, to actually learn really what it is, deeply what it is to have a human body and a human experience.
Hmm.
I think because sometimes like my challenge can actually be incarnating, like being here fully. Like I can often go off into a dream world or kind of different realities, and actually I have to keep anchoring, anchoring, anchoring. That's my lesson is no, come back, come back, come back. You know, I'm here to live and breathe here now. This is why I'm in a human body. It's not like it's a mistake. It actually is chosen to be here.
Hmm.
So I feel like my gaze in this lifetime is to be looking down, down at the ground, down at the trees and plants, not up at the stars.
Hmm.
So I haven't explored that so much. Kind of, in my in my book, I refer to, people can work who know Sirius. I feel Sirius has an Isis energy and she is a wolf goddess.
Hmm.
You got Canis Major, Canis Minor, you got the lupus kind of, constellations. There are constellations connected with wolf mythology and that wolf energy. Um, someone put to me once, do wolves come from a different planet on a different? I was like, I have no idea. I don't know. I'm not the person to ask about that. And I'm quite comfortable in my ignorance of that as well. I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with not knowing. It's
Sometimes
like,
that makes it more fun, right? The
yeah,
mystery. I understand wanting to get answers, but one thing I will say is if you think you're a starseed, um, whether you agree with that or idea or not, and I'm starting to become a little more open to it being possible, just with my own journeys and experiences. Before this meeting time closes out here, we go to part two. If you are a starseed, wolf energy can actually help you embody this incarnation because wolf is so grounded in the ways of the earth. And I think, again, in this new age movement, wolf energy is important because it helps you live in this body, not long for a long lost, star millions of light years away. It's right here, right now. So with that said, we will have to go to a part two here. So we'll be back shortly. Stay tuned.